Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. We're in the final days of 2022, but let's skip right to 2024 and the race for Indiana governor. Two of the state's best known Republicans are officially in the race this week. Mike Braun announced his candidacy on Monday morning. It came just a few hours after Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch confirmed her campaign online. Today, our Drew Blair is with the Lieutenant Governor.
Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, and now 2024 Governor candidate Crouch. Thanks so much for your time today.
Oh my gosh, it's good to be with you.
We're going to get right into this and think about Governor Crouch. You've served 2 terms as lieutenant under Governor Holcomb, and for some observers and voters that may then be seen as a 3rd Holcomb term. Is that fair? How will you be the same? How would you be different?
Well, you know, I'm running for governor because I have a vision for Indiana that will propel our state into the future. And over the past 8 years, I've traveled the state listening to Hoosiers, and they want a leader who understands and can relate to what they need. They want a governor who has the leadership and the experience to be able to act on what Indiana needs to be successful. And as governor, I'll build on the foundation, the strong economic foundation we already have. But I will focus on the next chapter in Indiana's history, which is about quality of life. And we will improve the quality of life of Hoosiers by focusing on 4 building blocks: growing our economy for all Hoosiers, investing in education, strengthening our families and communities, and then transforming government. And when we do that, we not only will improve the lives of Hoosiers, but we will create new and better opportunities for Hoosier families and businesses to succeed.
Abortion remains a driving issue for voters, some called midterm elections, the abortion election. The status of Indiana's ban could develop in this next month as the Indiana Supreme Court hears arguments on it. You have said you want to protect the sanctity of life. Do you believe the law will be upheld?
I quite honestly believe that the law will be upheld. And one of the reasons I do believe that is the reason it was a good law was because the General Assembly is comprised of legislators that actually are elected and represent people. And they were voting on behalf of the citizens of Indiana. I mean, my record's clear, I'm pro-life, and so it's about that kind of sanctity of life that we have here in Indiana that makes it so important. And that's part of the quality of life, too.
Do you want to see lawmakers go even further with more restrictions or possibly removing the exceptions for rape and incest?
I can't speculate on what the General Assembly will do. I think they'd
like to see it.
We landed in a good place with the law that they passed. And I'll tell you what is also important with what was passed is the company bill, which was Senate Enrolled Act 2, which provided for $75 million in funding for families and for women and children, providing counseling for unwanted pregnancies for those mothers who found themselves in those situations. I think we're in a good place.
You and Governor Holcomb have touted the economic success here today and over these last 6 years. The general consensus, though, for voters in Republican primaries has been more motivated by social issues: abortion, immigration, guns. So what is the key to you for winning the primary?
Well, I have a record. This isn't like I'm lieutenant governor. It's the first thing I've done. I have a conservative record that I'll stand on as a state representative and then throughout my other public service. And that record is very pro-life. It's very pro-Second Amendment. And it is about those conservative values that we hold dear as Republicans.
The administration has faced, as you were part of its leadership and observing as well, and part of so many news conferences over the last couple of years, has faced criticism for the handling of COVID-19. As you look back, Do you believe the state handled this health crisis in the right ways? Would you change anything if you could go back?
First of all, I think that Governor Holcomb successfully maneuvered the COVID pandemic, being able to protect Hoosiers' lives and keep the economy open. With a lot of conflicting and changing information constantly. Today we have a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks who, are saying this is what should have happened, and they believe that they would be 100% right 100% of the time. We have to look forward. And if I am governor, knowing what we know now, there will not be shutdowns, lockdowns, or mandates. We will give information and guidance, and then we will depend upon Hoosiers to be able to make decisions regarding their lives, the lives of their families, and their communities. And we will have experts that'll be on tap, but won't be on top of policy decisions. We need to, as a country, to be better prepared for these situations if they ever happen again, and hopefully they never do. And as governor, Indiana will be prepared.
This is a question that we can't imagine won't be asked of every GOP candidate for governor across the country. So I'll ask you, do you want Donald Trump as the party's presidential nominee?
I supported Donald Trump's policies, not his rhetoric. I will be supportive of the Republican candidate who can best address the failures of the Biden administration. I don't think I've ever endorsed a political candidate at the national level, but we'll see.
So if he's the nominee, you will be voting for Donald Trump?
I think there's a lot of people that will be working and that will be putting themselves out there, and I'd like to wait and see what the result of that is and who all will be throwing their hat into the ring.
Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, thank you for this time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, coming up, one-on-one with Governor Eric Holcomb. Does he believe a court will reinstate Indiana's new abortion ban? We'll ask him next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we turn now to Governor Eric Holcomb as he enters his final 2 years as the state's governor. He sat down with our Garrett Berquist.
With us now is Governor Eric Holcomb. Governor, thanks for letting us drop by today.
Well, good to be with you, and good morning.
So looking back on 2022, what are some of the things that you are most proud of from this year?
Well, we had quite a few accomplishments, some that dwarf others. Obviously, when you think about the capital investment that came into the state of Indiana, record year, obliterated the last record. Last year, we had an all-time high capital investment come through the IEDC, Economic Development Corporation, at $8.7 billion. This year, we're north of $22 billion. And what that really means, aside from just being a big number, is with that growth and that momentum comes a lot of opportunity for Hoosiers and very high wage jobs. The average wages for that capital investment, they're about $34.71, to be exact, actually. That's the average. And so the key for us is to make sure that we're skilling up Hoosiers, that they're on this pathway to fill all those high wage jobs. They're getting the skill sets necessary to fill those jobs. And that's not just exciting, that's a huge opportunity for our state. And as we continue to build out in these different ecosystems, be it the future of mobility, EV, battery production, semiconductors, as we see this onshoring or reshoring or friend-shoring of in different sectors, be it life sciences, medical devices, advanced manufacturing like autos. This is a very exciting time for any Hoosier because of the place that we're finding ourselves in the world.
The legislature focused heavily on social issues this session. We had abortion, we had the teaching of critical race theory in schools, the ban on transgender girls in sports. Was it right for state government to wade into some personal issues like those?
Well, it is their right. The folks that we elect, we being the electorate, to send people to the legislature to champion causes that they're passionate about. I have been very transparent and very upfront when I've stood for re-election myself and election prior to that, that I would be focused on 5 key areas. And the same are true today as they were 5 years ago. And it's why I think we see a lot of improvement and progress being made over the last 5 years. Those areas are economic development, educational development, workforce development, public health, our system, personal health and well-being, that type of development, and then community development, the built-in environment, the infrastructure, the quality of place, which leads to quality of life. Those are the 5 areas of development that I'm focused on that all sit on a foundation of good government and one based on civility. And so that's what Hoosiers can expect from me in this session and the session after that, which will be my 2 last sessions.
The abortion ban now has 2 court-ordered injunctions against it. You said you want it to play out in court.
Has to.
Do you personally believe this law is constitutional, and do you want it to be the law of Indiana?
I do believe it's constitutional, and I do believe it was part of the process, and I do believe just as before this law was put into place, there were critics and there were folks who disagreed with it, and they championed policy that would be closer to their aligned view. And the same will be true after the court decides on both of these cases, where we go from here. This is a contentious issue for sure. Good-willed people on both sides are involved, and just like over the last 50 years, I suspect we'll be talking about this over the next 50.
You signed permitless carry into law over the objections of your state police superintendent and a fairly significant portion of the law enforcement community. How did you weigh their input against those in favor of the bill, and why did you sign it knowing that your top cop did not support it?
Well, my top cop, Indiana Superintendent of Public Instruction, like myself, are continuing to work with law enforcement across the state of Indiana to make sure that we're doing all that we can to communicate. Obviously, you balance that with constitutional rights. And at the end of the day, that's where I saw what prevailed, not to be counter to that. Now, how do we not just adapt, but how do we align ourselves with one another? How do we partner with local law enforcement agencies? And when the state police are pulling someone over at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, how are they best equipped and best informed? And there are ways to get at that, and that's what we'll continue to work on.
All right, coming up, we bring in Indiana's best political team next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back Kip Tew and Allie Bartlett. Thank you for coming on with us this week, guys. Let's start with the governor's race. Senator Braun and Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch are both in. Allie, we'll begin with you this Sunday. Can we expect any other big names in the Republican Party getting involved? And if not, who could you see as the front runner, Braun or Crouch?
Yeah, so I will add one more name, which is another Republican that announced actually several months ago, well over 6 months ago at this point. That's Eric Doden. He's the former IEDC executive under Mike Pence. So he's been in the race for quite a while. Now we see the addition of Lieutenant Governor Crouch and Senator Braun. There have been other names out there that have been floated around, but at this point, I think we see that there's going to be a race here between the 3 of them. As far as the front runner, I think it's pretty early to tell that. It's been a very early race in general. I think part of that probably has to do with the fact that 2 of the candidates can do a lot of self-funding. So I think that kind of puts a twist in this that we haven't seen in races in recent times as much.
Kip, your thoughts on the Republicans in the race thus far? And Democrats say they have a few good candidates, so when can we expect to hear one of them officially announce that they were going to be in?
Well, to answer your first question first, I think that the field is not set on the Republican side. I do think Eric Doden's in, and he's serious, and he's raised some serious money. So I think it's right now at least a three-way, could be more than that. I've heard that the current IEDC chair, Brad Chambers, who ran a very successful company here in the state of Indiana before he went to work at IEDC, is also interested in running for governor. So there could be a couple more. It'll be interesting to see. On our side, there's quite a few people that I think are being talked about. I'm happy to say that we have two people I think pretty interested for sure, and that's Jennifer McCormick and Tom McDermott. Jennifer McCormick's the former superintendent of public instruction. Other names I've heard are Ryan Hatfield, Shelley Yoder, and Christina Hale. Shelley Yoder and Christina Hale both ran for Congress before, and Ryan Hatfield's right now a state legislator in Southern Indiana. So we've got a lot of folks I think on our side taking a look at that race.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Let's talk the budget now, if you don't mind. Projections unveiled at a state budget committee on Thursday show Indiana lawmakers will have a $1.6 billion in new funding to spend in the next 2 years. How should that money be spent, Kip?
Well, it ought to be spent on a whole bunch of things, but we're an undereducated state, and we are less healthy than our neighboring states, and so I think those are two of the biggest items. We ought to put more money in public safety. We ought to put more money in transportation. So there's a lot of things that can be funded. There are unfortunately some projections that we're going to be in a recession next year. So I think legislators are naturally conservative when it comes to spending that money. But we have some big needs in this state. And hopefully they're going to focus on what's necessary. We've got a teacher crisis in the state. It was not abated by the amount of money they put in the last budget. The way teachers have had to teach the last couple of years have caused incredible stress, and I don't think we give them nearly enough credit nor enough money to do their jobs. They're one of the most difficult jobs out there.
And Allie, now Republicans are talking about revamping education overall.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion about that. I think, there's a clear priority that's been set by leaders in both chambers that we will increase K-12 education funding, as Republicans have done historically year after year in the budget. We did increase K-12 funding by almost $2 billion in the last few budget cycles. And so that will continue. But yeah, the discussion regarding education is going to be a serious one. We want to help improve workforce development outcomes in the state of Indiana. And that doesn't always mean focusing on college as the next option, but probably focusing on how we can better prepare students for the workforce when they're in high school. And so I think that's going to be a big discussion at the legislature this year. Republicans are going to be very focused on that and making sure that there are practical outcomes for Hoosier students.
Kip?
Well, I think all those things are important. I definitely think that we need to do a better job of preparing students who don't want to go to college for a career after college, and that's a very laudable goal. But I think we need to do all of it. We are undereducated in the state of Indiana compared to our neighbors, and it makes us less competitive. And we need to make sure that we have folks who don't want to go to college or who can still be contributing members of the economy. We need to set them up for success, but we also have to make sure the kids that do want to go to school can get there and have the proper tools to get there. And we're falling behind the other states in that regard.
Yeah, I have a little more than a minute left. I want to get you both in here on this one. What can we expect from the next session? Number one priority, Allie?
I think number one, we're going to see a ton on education, as we just discussed, but also on healthcare. Making sure that we have enough healthcare workers in the state of Indiana, increasing our investments in our healthcare program, and making sure that we can keep healthcare costs down for Hoosiers. I think that's going to be the other really big ticket item, and possibly something to do with income tax cuts, so that we can continue to attract and retain talent in the state and to combat inflation.
30 seconds for you, Kip. Close us out.
I don't think we need to cut any more taxes. We're on the bone. We need the revenue. But the other things I agree with. I'd like to see a discussion about legalizing cannabis as well. We'll see if that happens.
Okay. Good conversation. Good to see you both. Thank you so much for coming on. Happy holidays. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Take all Indiana politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. A programming note, we will not be here next Sunday for Christmas morning. We'll be back here in 2 weeks on New Year's Day, talking more with Governor Eric Holcomb and looking ahead to the start of the General Assembly. Have a great rest of your weekend and happy holidays.